Meanwhile, far away to the north in the Scottish Hebrides, another red-listed species is in desperate need of help to prevent its extinction in the British Isles. Not the curlew, but a small, brown, long-distance migrant bird, so secretive as to be seldom seen. The wild places where they still live have changed little over centuries. Traditional farming here does little to disturb the semi-natural grassland known as the maca, which is home to this noisy little bird, the corncrake. This terrain in the Hebrides is perfect for ground nesting corncrakes, but it is now the last place in the UK where they breed. They have evolved as highly successful ground nesters, perfectly camouflaged against aerial predators like the buzzard. Instinctively, they choose dense natural cover for nesting, laying and hatching their eggs. This recent footage reveals behaviour which has never been filmed before. The female bird has just hatched her eggs and is eating the shells. As the first chicks emerge, the female talks to them softly with a variety of grunts and hums, encouraging them to break free. Before even leaving the egg, the chicks reply to their mother with tiny squeaks. Quickly moving the brood away from the nest into dense vegetation is essential for their survival. For centuries, corncrakes nested commonly in organic arable crops and hay meadows across the UK. But with the intensification of arable agriculture in the 19th century and the 20th century shift from hay to modern silage fields, the species declined catastrophically. In the UK, corncrakes now cling to the very edge of existence in the Hebrides. However, thanks to the work of Deepdale Conservation Trust and many partners, there is perhaps hope for the corncrake in England. "60 specially designed pens have been constructed at Marsh Farm, Deepdale, for a breeding flock of corncrakes. Once again, the work has taken place under Chrissy Kelly's experienced direction.
My love of birds really has been with me since childhood. I have a book when I was about 6 saying my new hobby is ducks, and never really looked back since. I've worked in aviculture now for around 35 years. I studied zoology at university and really worked with birds ever since, in America and in the UK, with species of cranes, many species of waterfowl, waders, turtle doves, lots of different species, and of course corncrakes and curlews. It's been fantastic starting afresh here at Deepdale. With Andrew's kindness and enthusiasm to set up the projects here has been absolutely fantastic. I've worked with the corncrake breeding programme for around 17 years. First started rearing them in the year 2000, but the breed and release programme for the last 17 years. And I've probably reared nearly 2,000 corncrakes for release into the wild over that period.
In the autumn of 2024, the world's only captive breeding flock of corncrakes moved into a newly constructed winter facility at Deepdale Conservation Trust. To keep the birds safe through winter, their quarters have been carefully insulated from cold, damp, and even noise. The floor has a thick layer of soft sand and heating elements to keep the birds' feet warm and dry. Cypress branches offer plenty of cover, where these shy birds can feel safe. To maintain strict biosecurity and reduce stress on the birds, only Mark and Chrissy feed and water the corncrakes over the winter. Once released, the birds quickly settle into their new home, and remote cameras allow their well-being and behaviour to be monitored night and day. Because corncrakes are seasonal migrants, their hours of daylight and nighttime are adjusted to replicate a winter in Africa. Infrared lamps are used for night surveillance, revealing many details of the crake's nocturnal behaviour.
It's always an exciting day when the corncrakes come out of their winter quarters and into their breeding aviaries at the beginning of spring.
In early April, the birds migrate a full 200 metres in soft cloth bags from the Africa of their winter sheds to the Norfolk grassland of the breeding pens. Before the birds are released into their pens, vets give them a full health check, ensuring they're fit and strong and in the best condition to breed.
You can raise them if you like and carry on.
Yeah, happy. Once checked, each bird is moved to the right pen, in readiness for the breeding season ahead.
When we go in and feed the birds, we only occasionally get a glimpse of them in there. The pens have been planted up with a mixture of wildflowers, nettles and some big grasses. So, you know, they're really secretive and they do like to hide away. But we're constantly trying to sort of very quietly observe them.
This little wooden shed is the headquarters of Deepdale's corncrake breeding operation.
We pair the birds up according to their stud book data, so we know the genetic history of each individual, so we can put most unrelated birds together. So they go into the pens, and soon the male will start quexing. They'll stand on the wooden tables or the big tufts of grass that we've put in there and start quexing away. And this doesn't take long before all the other males start to quex as well. This can go on day and night to impress the female. We put the pairs together, and after a couple of weeks, if they like each other, the female should have started laying her clutch of eggs. So at this time, I'll go in and have a look carefully around the pen to see if I can see a scrape or a scrape with some eggs in it, to see if that pair bond has been good and breeding successful. There's a scrape there. So once we've found a scrape or a nest, we have a chart on the outside of the door, and I'll mark down where I've spotted that, so that next time when I go in, I can locate the nest and see how many more eggs have been laid. It's important to take the male out of the pen to allow the female peace and quiet to incubate the eggs alone. It's the female alone that's responsible for incubating, hatching and rearing the chicks. She will lay 1, occasionally 2 eggs every day. Usually a clutch is between 8 and 12 eggs. The incubation period's around 16 days. It's just a simple process of counting the eggs to understand when those chicks might hatch. Historically, we used to hand rear all the corncrake chicks, which worked really well. So we'd bring the eggs in just before they were due to hatch and then hatch them artificially and then rear them by a technique of puppet rearing, which for a corncrake was a brown sock. It was really successful, but in 2019, we really wanted to trial parent rearing because obviously it's very labour intensive. These chicks need feeding every hour from about 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. So to have the female rear their own chicks, A, it's a much more natural way of doing it, and B, it's a lot less labour intensive and therefore costly for any conservation project. It's been really interesting to capture on film some of the behaviour between the mum and chicks after hatching when they're still on the nest. It's absolutely fascinating to watch the female interact with her chicks and the number of vocalisations she has. She can get quite annoyed with them. We've seen her just actually grabbing them and bringing them back to the nest if she thinks there's danger close by. Over a couple of days, the chicks are really mobile and ready to move off the nest.
Once feeding themselves, corncrake chicks grow amazingly fast. As their adult plumage begins to develop, they change from fluffy black to camouflaged mottled brown. At 10 to 14 days of age, wild chicks are independent of their mothers, so this is when the captive bred chicks are moved to the site where they will be released. In 2025, a new release site has been chosen, in Yorkshire.
This year, Deepdale Conservation Trust have partnered with Lower Derwent National Nature Reserve. So the chicks are transferred up to the Lower Derwent for another 3 weeks before being released onto the reserve there. I met Craig, the head warden up there, earlier on in the year to discuss the location of the rearing pens and also look at the water meadows and areas where the birds will be released. And hopefully return the following year to find other corncrakes and have a successful breeding season. Craig and some of his volunteers came over to learn about how the food is mixed up and the level of nutrients that the birds need to be given and how they're fed. We went through all the protocols and they took away with them all the ingredients for the best corncrake food possible. It's really important to get the diet right and how that transitions over the period of time up to release.
Though the birds' journey from Deepdale to Yorkshire is only 4 hours, once wild, they have a much longer journey ahead of them.
These small birds have a long way to migrate from Britain, so they travel all the way down across Europe, across North Africa, across the Sahara, down to Western Africa, we believe. They stop off there for a short time before then making another stop for their final resting place in the Congo Basin. And then the following spring make their way all the way back to usually within about 2 kilometres of where they were released the previous year. It's absolutely fascinating. I'm really proud of this site and the work we do here, and really want to share the knowledge that we've gained over the years and with other people. A bit like the Irish group that came over that got potential to have a project over there. So it was really, really brilliant just to talk to other Corncrake enthusiasts.
To keep the young Corncrakes calm, they make the journey by road to Yorkshire overnight.
They travel by night because it's such a long distance, and corncrakes don't feed at night, and it's nice and cool and quiet. So we put them into boxes that they're going to be transferred, and each box will go into a pen up at the Lower Derwent.
Put a little seatbelt on. Yeah, that's what we do.
We transfer late at night because it's quite a long journey, and corncrake chicks don't feed at night, so it makes sense to be really nice and quiet when they're not feeding and it's nice and cool, and then they'll be transported and they'll be ready to be put into the pens at first light. Not just me here. I have a great team that are employed for the really busy season of hatching and rearing all the chicks for both the projects. So they come and live on site, so they can be here to do the evening checks and make sure everybody's all right when I have a day off occasionally. We also have volunteers that have been absolutely essential, and it's great to have, just conservation projects that people can really come and get stuck into and feel as though they're doing some really valuable work, which they are. It's been brilliant having them on board.
At first light, on a summer morning, the birds are caught in their pre-release pens. After such effort by so many people, the time has finally come for Craig to release corncrakes on the reserve he protects with such care.
The release today of another 4 corncrakes back into the Lower Derwent Valley is an absolute dream for me. This has been a long time coming. To me, this is a missing, iconic species in this landscape. Putting the sound of corncrakes back into the valley amongst curlews and drumming snipe, in amongst these fantastic flower-filled meadows, is really putting a kind of missing piece of the jigsaw back into the landscape.
The corncrakes are a really special bird, and anybody that started working with them will get this. We have an expression, well, you've been corncraked, because they do become a bit of an obsession. They're just so fascinating. The way they incubate and hatch and rear the chicks, and in the wild, those chicks are independent by 10 days old and will continue to self-feed and then navigate their way to the Congo and then back again. I feel privileged to work so closely with corncrakes. Not many people get to see them. Their plumage is just beautiful. They're this mixture of earthy tones of browns and buffs and yellows, and the dark flecks on the edges of their feathers create streaks down their back, which is perfect camouflage for their grassy habitat, of course. In the breeding season, the cheeks of the male turn this greyish-blue colour, which contrasts the deep chestnut eyes. They are just beautiful little birds. I like to think this place is a centre of hope for the corncrakes, to establish them back into meadows across England and to be heard by generations to come.
Since Andrew Crean first dreamed of restoring a Norfolk marsh, the conservation work of Marsh Farm Deepdale has blossomed and grown.